let's start right at the beginning. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and how this decision of climbing Everest came to be? Because we think of things as spontaneous and impulsive, but when we look at it in retrospect, it's always like that. You see a series of dots that connect to what led you to that moment in making that decision. So, what was that like for you?
Okay, so a bit of intro of myself. I am Lieutenant Colonel Pooja Nautiyal, and I am from Uttarakhand. And I've done my schooling and college from Dehradun, and my father is also from the army, and my grandfather is also from the British Army. So, the army runs in my blood.
Oh,
And maybe that was the reason I also chose to join Indian Army. So, from the childhood itself, I was into adventures, not mountaineering, but yes, whitewater rafting, and then a bit of rock climbing, then trekking, small treks, and running, of course, was my passion. I joined Indian Army in the year 2000, and post that, I served Indian Army for about 21 years, and then I quit in 2021.
okay.
So, when I was conferred with the Chief of Army Staff competition cards thrice, and then I was also best in endurance cadet in my academy. So this is with this little background of me. I quit army in 2021, and I had to join my new organization after a month. So it
Mhm.
was somewhere around April 21. So in
Right.
April 21, what happened? I had that 1 month with me, so I somehow I contacted Colonel
Mhm.
Romil Bathwal. So I asked Colonel Romil. I said, "Can I do Everest Base Camp?" Because I could see, in my status also somebody had posted. So I saw that Boots and Crampons is launching their first ever BNC. I mean EBC trek. That was the
Oh,
first trek of BNC. So I asked him. He said, "Okay, you can do it." So from there, when I went to Nepal and when I trekked for those 18 days, going up and coming down, I really liked the nature was mesmerizing, and the trekkers were fantastic, and we met some seasoned hardcore climbers also who were heading towards towards base camp for Everest, Mount Everest.
mhm.
So we had chat with them also, and their stories were very inspirational.
Right.
And the moment I saw Mount Everest, so it just struck to my mind. I thought, "Yeah, let me do this, giant mountain once in my lifetime." So that was the thought which I carried along with me after doing EBC. And post that, I contacted Colonel Romil, of course, and I said, "Sir, I want to do Everest, Mount Everest."
Mhm.
So he says ki it is not to be done on a impulse. You have
Mhm.
to train for that.
Right.
So from there, my journey started, and with along with boots and crampons only, I did all my peaks, I would
Mhm.
say. I did UT Kangli, then I did Mount Kun,
Mhm.
post that I did Island Peak, and then Ahmad Ablam,
Right.
Mount Lobuche,
Mhm.
Kala Pathar, and after that I was, prepared to take on this journey of Mount Everest.
Mhm. That
Yeah.
sounds like quite a lot that you've done in the last couple of years itself. What was so it seems like you weren't into climbing from an early age, right? So what age did you start climbing? What age did you
Yeah.
take to it?
Yeah. So, before that, I would like to say if you are from mountains, it does not it does not mean that you're a mountaineer. Being a
Right.
mountaineer is a totally different ball game. You have to get into a very strict regime and all that. So, when I quit army, I was already 42 years of age,
Mhm.
but uh, my hobby is to take on challenges. My passion is to take on challenges, whether it's a professional challenge or a personal challenge. So when I saw mighty Mount Everest, so I took it as a personal challenge for self. I wanted to know whether I can do it. I'm best in endurance, throughout my army career, I was physically very strong. So can I take on this challenge at this
Right.
age? So that was the thing. Then I decided that yes, let me at least give it a try. So this
Right.
is how my journey started. It's at the age of 42, and yes, I submitted at the age of 46.
That's amazing. It's like been only 4 years that you've been doing this, and you've already attained like the highest goal of any mountaineer, right? So you started with the dream. Got into climbing with the dream of climbing Everest. You've already achieved that now. Does that seem like the end of the road for you, or do you have more that you want to
Not
do
at
in
all.
this?
Not at all, Niti. I believe that it is just the beginning. Mount Everest is just the beginning, and I would like to scale more mountains. Maybe if given if opportunity is given to me, I would like to do 7 summits. If
Mm-hmm.
I get the chance, I would like to do more 8,000 meters.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm taking this mountain to a mission. I would like to mentor ladies who are above 40, 45 years of age, and
Right.
who feel that they're invisible and they cannot pursue their dreams. I would
Right.
like to mentor them and take them to their goals. This is what
Right.
I feel
Yeah,
I
so
should do.
I took the liberty to, go through some of your interviews, and you speak a lot about age and women and gender, right? So I just wanted to understand from you, women may be ready or people may be ready at whatever age, but is the system, according to you, ready to include people of a higher age at a certain point? Is the system ready to be more inclusive, or are we not ready to take that on? Because we may be ready, but at an individual level, there's only so much that we can do. We do need support, institutional support, and organizational support to get ahead, right? So, do you think, like, on that level, is the world ready for it?
See, when it comes to mountaineering, it may look like a solitary kind of a, sport, but you need a team. There's a complete team which stands behind you, which includes your family, your close
Right.
family, and your relatives also, the society. If you are working in an organization, yes, organization also plays a very important role. I would not say that, gender or the age is going to matter in this respect. It is how people take your dreams. The society
Mhm.
takes your dream. Yes, you have to break societal bias, of course. Being a woman,
Right.
age is okay. Age plays a totally different role when you're climbing up. Those
Mhm.
challenges are different. But as far as society is concerned, for a woman, it becomes slightly difficult at this age because people say that, you are supposed to look after home, not the Himalayas. Look at the home, not the Himalayas. Yeah, you are supposed to take care of the kids and enjoy your life, be safe because you have already reached, 46 years of age and you have such a lovely, beautiful life to live. Why do you want to get into all this? So, and personally also, being a woman, we also feel that, our responsibility is towards our family. The first
Right.
responsibility towards a family. So when you're preparing for something like Mount Everest, Mission Mount
Mhm.
Everest, you are at least trading off the time which was supposed to be given to your kids, to your
Right.
training. So the sacrifices which kids are making, the sacrifices
Mhm.
which you are making. So women, they themselves think, no, I should not do it. I should not, pursue my dreams. Maybe later, or I would have done it before. So our personal bias is
Mhm.
also, one has to break that also, and also the societal bias. This is what
Yeah.
I feel. Yeah.
That is true. So I heard somewhere that you said that your father advised you not to join the army, right? Because he
Yeah.
said it's not for girls, and you were in the fifth grade at that time or something.
Um,
How did your parents and your children respond to when you decided to start climbing? Was the reaction
okay.
almost the same?
Yeah, yeah. So, you know what? No, he did not say girls should not join army. He was actually worried that, that when I joined army, there was no future for ladies in the army because permanent commission was not there. So he used to tell me that, you don't have the future there. You should do something different. do some, more studies and
Mhm.
pursue PhD and become a professor somewhere because you have a good career that side. So his
Right,
concern was that not that I should not join army that ways. So
right.
when I told when I told that I'm going to do Mount Everest, my kids that looked they both of them looked at me, and my husband was totally in a shocked state that what is she saying? But then in the heart of heart, all of them they knew that if I decide to do something, I do it. So then
Right.
my husband supported me a lot. My kids also supported me and the complete family, even my parents, they initially they said, my mother especially, she said, now the age is catching up, Pooja, don't get into all this. Do something different, anything else, but this is a very strong call which you are taking. So I
Mhm.
said, Ki, nahi, mummy, I want to do it. Then she also said, okay, you do it. Take care, prepare well. The moment I said that I will do it, so then everybody was like, they were aligned
Yeah,
with me
behind
and
you.
yeah, and they were aligned with my thought and prayed
Yeah.
for me. Yeah.
So, you've been in the army. I heard that when you got into the army, you were the only woman there in your unit, right? And you've achieved a lot of firsts as a woman in the forces. Do you feel that's the same way for the outdoors? Do you see a parallel with that being a male-dominated space and this being a male-dominated space as well?
Yeah, you are talking about mountains. Yeah, in the
The
old
outdoors
narrative.
in general, like climbing and
Yeah,
any of the
yeah,
outdoors.
climbing. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. In climbing, it used to be an old narrative that it is male dominated kind of a thing. But now I feel that women are equally good. And, this time when I was there in base camp, in our team itself, in Boots and Crampons team itself, we were four girls and four boys. I mean,
Right.
equal amount of this. So, otherwise, also in other camps, also I saw a lot of ladies and girls were present. There was a complete
Mhm.
team of NCC girls there. So
Right.
now that I think that thing is not there. I mean, it's now it's equal. It's equal.
In terms of opportunity, there is scope, and in terms of support, there is
Support is
resources
also the.
available. Yeah.
I believe I think the women are getting much more support than male fraternity nowadays.
In what
In
sense
this
would you
and
say?
in the sense like people are giving much more importance to the women to do all these kind of sports and giving them opportunity to undertake any kind of sport as compared to boys or men.
Hmm.
This is what I feel. And as you know that Mount Everest requires a lot of financial support also, so
Correct.
women generally get the support vis-a-vis a male candidate. That is also I've seen.
Right. And do you
Yeah,
think that's a step in the right direction? Do you
that
think
is,
women need a little extra push because we've not had access to it for really long?
yeah, it's because it is still a nascent stage for women to,
Mhm.
come up, especially in the society like India. So it's a very positive step, and people should promote and help women whosoever wants to do and pursue their dreams.
Right. Both army and the outdoors, especially climbing, are very physical endeavors, right? Since you've been in both domains, and there's like a lot of debate about the biological differences and capabilities of both genders, right? What's your take on that? Do you see the biological differences being a legitimate point of debate, saying that women are lesser in strength or in biological makeup, which makes them probably less likely to be in such spaces.
Okay. So first I will talk about army. In army, generally what happens in infantry, women officers are not there. And infantry is actually the force which is fighting the battle.
Okay.
So women had always been in the supporting arms, oblique services. So their, stipulated standards are there that they are supposed to meet those standards, and women are meeting those standards. The and requirement of the army, as per that, women are living up to it. Yes, infantry needs much more physical strength, and probably I think in future when women are going to be inducted in the infantry also, they will live up to the mark of infantry standards also. When we come to mountains, so I always say mountain does not know that it's a male or a female. Mountain is not aware whether you have prepared for 1 year or 2 years, or you have just come and standing in front of the mountain. So when you are climbing up, you should not think that I'm a woman, he's a man, and I will be given some kind of preference. No, there's no preference to anyone. So you have to be equals there on the mountains, and both male, whether it's a male or a female gender, both have to be equally strong to climb up there. So now I come on to the physical and the mental strength. Your mental strength plays much more role than the physical strength. This is what I have seen and I've been seeing for the last 4 years. If you're mentally strong, you will be able to handle it. And especially for Mount Everest, it is, I think it is, somewhere around 60 and 70 and 30%. 70% is all mental and 30% is of physical strength. This is
Correct.
my personal experience. Yeah.
Correct. And what would you say? So, for physical strengthening, we know that we have to go to the gym, we have to do cardio, there's like a whole list of things that you can do to get physically strong. What does one do to get mentally strong? How do you build that? Do you think it's like a personality thing, or anybody can build mental strength?
Yeah, you can, no, it's not about the personality thing. You can build up on the mental strength also. Like, you have to psych up your mind. Psychologically, you have to prepare yourself to undertake these kind of expeditions. So, which involves your fear management. There's a fear of falling down, there's a fear of getting frostbite, there's a fear of returning because of the bad weather. So, when you see these kind of fear, you have to accept these kind of fear and move on. Fear is not your enemy. The panic is. This is my take. You should not get panic and stay calm in these kind of conditions and take appropriate decisions at the right time. So that's one. Another thing is visualization. You visualize good things. I used to, when I used to get do my treadmills or runnings, I always used to visualize myself, standing on the top of the mountain. I always used to visualize not only the positive side, the negative sides also, that it will be very cold. There will be a lot of pain and there will be no food there and I'll not get the sleep. So I used to accept all these things, used to train my mind so that when I'm actually on the mountain, I know that this is going to happen with me. So one has to train himself or herself psychologically to undertake these kind of challenges in life.
So basically, you
Yeah.
researched all the bad things that can happen and told yourself
Uh,
that this is the worst that can happen and I have to
yeah.
be prepared for it. That's
Yes.
basically
Yes.
how you prepare.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
How would you say your training or your work with the army for 21 years helped you climb Everest? Do you think there were any transferable skills, anything you got from there which helped you here?
Yes, of course. Army teaches you to take decisions in under pressure. Army teaches you, it makes you mentally robust, and it teaches you to take on any kind of challenge and never give up. So these are the qualities which we imbibe over the during our training time and also when you are serving in the army. So all the and adapt to the nature. I mean, in army also we keep on shifting from one place to another. We get postings every 2 years, so we
Right.
meet new people and we adapt according to the new
Correct.
environment. Same is the case here in mountains also. You have to adapt to the circumstances, to the environment. Here also you are sleep deprived. In army also during operations and special missions, you are sleep deprived. In the training also we are taught that you have not slept for 24 hours. How do you deal with it? So we get trained into all these things, and I think that has really played a very important role in my climb.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of parallels between the life in the army and the life that you, even in terms of discipline, right? The discipline that you need to train yourself for it, and it takes years and months and years even to get to a place where you are actually ready to go up. So
Yes.
yeah, there is a lot of parallels between those two.
Yes. Yeah. So it has
uh,
really helped me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Was there any point in time while you were training you thought that, oh, why am I doing this? That you had to keep reminding yourself, oh, this is the reason why I have. So, I think it was Benjamin Franklin who said that if passion drives you, let logic or reason be the reins for it.
Hmm.
Saying that, I think what he meant was that passion is like wildfire, and it can run amok, right? And you need something to contain it.
Yeah.
What's that containment been for you? What's your North Star been?
So, when I used to do my training, I generally used to get the feeling that, my age is not with me, and, people who are working out on either side of me are much, much more stronger than me. So whenever I used to train and I used to come back and with a heavy heart, and I used to discuss these things with my son, with my husband, that I'm not up to the mark, and I'm not been able to devote that kind of time. Also, since I'm working, so I was unable to devote that kind of time which was required to be devoted for this kind of ambition. But my husband and my children, they had that kind of confidence in me, and they always used to tell me that no, Mama, you will be able to do it. The competition is not with the people around you. The competition is with
Yourself.
yourself. Yeah,
Mhm.
and you know that you should and you would be able to do it. Seeing you and whatever dedication I used to show, that at my passion, seeing my passion. And so here I would like to say that my family stood behind me throughout, throughout in these
That's
4 years.
wonderful. That's wonderful because I've been climbing for a couple of years, and the common narrative is that the families are not okay with it, and we are doing it despite that. So it's really wonderful to know that your family is behind you and supports you fully in whatever you want to do, and you don't have to
Yeah.
limit yourself from that front at least.
Yeah, you know what, Niti, especially at this age, it plays a very important role that your family is with you.
Right.
If your family is not there with you, you can't pursue your dreams like this. If you are young, you are not married, or you are single, then you can take any kind of decision. When you are in a family, it has to be inclusive decision. The decision is not my own. The decision is of the complete family. So they
Correct.
have always been supportive that ways. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the entire family's expedition. It's not just yours, right? They're all
Yes.
part of
Yeah.
it. They're in it
Correct.
together. So
Correct.
yeah,
Correct. Yeah.
that's amazing to know that you have your family behind you. That's like a big thing because a lot of people don't have that, and that's like the
Mm.
missing secret ingredient in a lot of things that can bring you success, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So, so let's talk about you spoke about families. I want to get into it a little bit from the sense of work life balance and work and family balance because I remember hearing you say that your work's really stressful and demanding, right? And taking the time out for such long durations is pretty challenging. What's the organizational support been like, and how have you managed work, family, plus this dream of yours?
So this is what army teaches us, multitasking. At one time, you are supposed to handle so many things in the army. And also as a woman, I feel that we are very good at it as
Mhm.
compared to men.
Okay.
We are generally ladies are much, much better in multitasking. So I used to leave for my office 9 in the morning. Used to fall back at 7:30 in the evening. Just used to change and hit the gym. And they used to work out till 9, 9:30, 10. Used to come back, sleep. Used to get up in the morning at 5:30, then again exercise for some time, then change, and then go to the call to my office. So that used to be my routine throughout. Yes, it was challenging. My organization supported me in the sense they never used to disturb me once I'm back home. Other than that, there was no respite. I mean, I worked till the last day. 7th of April, we joined there in Nepal. So till 6th of April, I was working in my office.
Okay.
And I'm thankful to my organization because my organization is such that they don't leave somebody like for 2 months or so. So they
Mhm.
they they gave me leave for 2 months. That's the support I got from my organization.
Right.
Yeah,
Which is a big thing, right? Because
which is
that
a big
usually
thing.
is not possible.
Yeah, yeah. Generally,
Mhm.
one has to leave or resign from the job and do some with this kind of expedition and come back and join some new organization. This
Correct.
is what I've seen generally in
Correct.
yeah.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that ways my organization was supportive, and yes, of course, my family was anytime there for me.
Let's come to the climb itself. Tell me what that was like from when you started to when you got back.
Started like 7th of April, you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 7th of April, we were welcomed by boots and crampons in Kathmandu, and we stayed in best of the best hotel. We had a very gala time. 7th, 8th, 9th, I think we were there, and we used to have a nice time, and we did a lot of shopping for our expedition. And the team was extremely good. Bharat was very good. We could not meet Romil sir there because he had
Okay.
already left with the EBC batch. And after that, we were supposed to go to Ramechhap, and from there we were to fly to Lukla and then start a trek. But weather gods were not there with us, so we had to take a what do you call that, trekker kind of or jeep kind of a thing, and all of us went through road. So it took
Mhm.
us around 2 days to reach a place. I'm forgetting the name, and from there we started our climb
Mhm.
towards for Fagding. So then we went to this place Namche. There we did some acclimatization training. We stayed there for a day. Then went to Dingboche. We again did one climb there and
Mhm.
stayed there for a day. And from there we went to Gorakshep, and then there also we went for Mount Lubuche, did our
Mhm.
summit, and came back. And from there we went to Everest Base Camp. So this is the journey which we followed, and I think we took around 9 to 10 days to reach
Mhm.
Everest Base Camp. And we stayed there in the Everest Base Camp, and we used to go for our training and the training sessions that how to cross ladders, how to do ice falls, and how to make the knots and how to cross jumaring and everything. So that training was conducted at the base camp, and then we did rotations. Yes, we went to Camp 1, Camp 2, came back. Then Romil sir used to take us to various this thing treks also. He took us to Kala Patthar, he took us to Pumori, and he used to, especially to me, he used to say that I will not let you take rest. You must go and keep yourself totally embedded into the mountain, and so that you don't face problems later. So, and we had a very nice, good puja also there,
Okay.
yeah, with the Lama and all. It was a very good and nice event. And after that, we started with our final climb. So,
And
our
what was
final
that
climb.
like? Which from base camp to camp one, camp two? What was that like? How many rotations did you do? How many times did you go
So,
up and down the mountain?
yeah, so we did only one rotation.
Okay.
After the puja, we did one rotation to camp 1, then camp 2, and then came back to base camp, then waited for the appropriate window for the summit push. A
Mhm.
few of the members of our team, they had left for Kathmandu to take rest, some,
Mhm.
rest and recoup. And we were, myself and two more fellow climbers, we were at base camp itself. And then we started our final climb on the 16th of May, if I'm not wrong, 16th or 17th of May.
Right.
So, yeah. And from we crossed Khumbu Ice Falls, I remember, and after that, Camp 1. Then that same day, I hit Camp 2 and I stayed there at Camp 2. Then next day, went to Camp 3. Then next day we went to Camp 4, and Camp 4 I was totally exhausted. I told my Sherpa Tenzing that if we can sleep, for a night. So he said, ki, no, we cannot sleep. We have to start tonight itself. I said, okay. And I said, ki, let's take some rest. Both of us, just slept in the tent. And around 11:30, we got up at night. So he says, ki, ma'am, it's already 11:30. Let's go. Then that time I said, ki, Tenzing, this is not the right time to go. No, we are already late. We should not start today. We'll start tomorrow.
Okay.
So we took rest that night, and the next day in the evening we started at 6:40 p.m. and we summited Mount Everest on 20th morning at 6:40 a.m. After
Wow.
12 hours, after 12 hours of walk,
I remember Romil
we
sir
climbed.
telling me that you climbed in some of the worst weather conditions. What was
Yeah,
that summit night like? What were the
yeah.
winds like? How
Oh
did
my
you
God.
persist?
Yeah. So we started at 6:40 p.m. 6:40 p.m. in the evening from Camp 4. When I was going up, I could see, the Sherpas dragging the climbers down. So that was the first sight the moment I saw that, I said, Ki Pooja, keep yourself, totally stress free. Take a deep breath and, keep moving. Take these, do not consider these things at all because I saw 4 or 5 people, being dragged by the Sherpas, literally dragged. They were just lying down and they were dragging with their down suit and making them come to Camp 4.
Right.
So I took deep breaths and we moved ahead. Around I think 2:30 at night, the snowstorm started hitting us,
Uh-huh.
and I was wearing big goggles to for my eyes. So my Sherpa told me, Tenzing told me to remove those goggles because I was unable to see the
Mhm.
path. So and it was night, so he said, "Ki, right now it is not required. In the morning you can wear it." I said, "Okay." I removed it and I said, "Ki, you put it in my bag." So instead of putting in my bag, he clammed it over my
Okay.
outside
Outside.
itself. Yeah. So we kept on walking. So when the at the first light, I said, "Okay, give me my goggles. Now it's
Mhm.
time. Otherwise it is going to harm my eyes." So he took out those goggles, and the goggles were totally snowed from inside and
Mhm.
the outside. We tried to remove the snow, but we couldn't do it. So he
Mhm.
said, "Ki, ma'am, we can't help it now. So what do you want to do?" I said, "Now I'm just standing on that Hillary step. I have to move forward. I'll not go back." And
Right.
the wind was at the speed of somewhere around 150, 160 kilometers per hour. It was very
Okay.
heavy. And the snow was so brutal, and I had a lot of bruises on my face also. But I thought, no, I will keep on moving. So when I crossed Hillary Step, I started getting, snow blindness.
Oh.
So when I was going up, and Tenzing told me that, ma'am, we are about to reach the summit. So, I started, crying. I got emotional. I remembered my husband. I remembered my children, and I remembered the God, and I remembered this 4 years of training which I did, and I did only for this. But and at the same time that snow blindness was also setting in. So I
Right.
could see white and some people, two three boys sitting on the top and some praying flags there. And I reached there. I he clicked my photograph, and within 5 minutes we were about to come back. Then he said, "Ma'am, let's go down." I said, "Now I cannot see anything." I was unable to see. Everything was white for me except for only one thing. I don't know how come. I could see only orange color. So
Okay.
luckily the ropes were orange, and
Oh.
some portion of his Tenzing's downsuit was also orange. So I
Oh.
could only see that, and with the help of my Sherpa, of course, we could come down. And after some time, I think after 4 or 5 hours or so, I started seeing a few things, and then that's how we came
So
down.
you had no goggles all throughout your climb. The
So
summit
after
pushed
that,
you.
when we came down, we crossed Hillary's Step. Then he took out some, local goggles from his bag down below. It was there, and then he said, "You okay? Wear this." And I wore that, and we came down.
There was some
Yeah,
saving grace there because
yeah,
otherwise it
some
would be.
saving. Yeah.
There's a
Because when
question.
when
Yeah.
we were climbing up that
Yeah.
time, even Sherpa was so exhausted. He was so exhausted, even he was unable to, make, decisions that time. So he was
Right.
just telling me, ma'am, we have to go up. Because he
Right.
also had that target. It was his dream also, The Sherpas also, they also want to
Right.
be successful in their summit. So he was telling me, ma'am, we have to go up. So he said, okay, let's go up. Yeah, that was.
So there's a question. Was it safe to sleep at Camp 4? Did you feel any major discomfort?
See, when you are at Camp 4, you are actually in the death zone. The oxygen content is really very low. It is said that it is around 30 to 33%.
Right.
I would not suggest anyone to do that because it is not safe.
Right.
I took that decision because I was feeling okay, and
Mhm.
oxygen. I had put that oxygen mask on this thing. Oxygen was there with me, and I was calculating. I was seeing my watch also, that what is my oxygen content in my body. So based
Correct.
on that, I was taking the decision, and I
Persistent.
took that decision. Yeah, but if you ask me, it is not recommended.
And usually that's not what climbers do, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
reach Camp 4 and then you push off for the summit the
Push
same
off.
night.
Yes, yes. I was also supposed to do that, but I slept. I overslept there. So, along with my Sherpa, Sherpa also overslept, so we couldn't.
It
Otherwise,
turned
we
out
were
to be a
supposed.
blessing in disguise because the next
Yeah,
day you were
yeah.
more rested and you had more
Yeah,
energy.
yeah.
So it
I
worked
would
out
not
fine.
say I would not say rested, because generally you don't get that kind of sleep and your body is giving up. Actually,
Mhm.
the your body is eating your own tissues to survive, and
Correct.
as also you're not eating anything there. So yes, it was some kind of. I mean, I would say that I could get some kind of rest. I could sit there and uh, psychologically prepare myself that yes, you have taken rest and now you move with full josh and energy. But still, had I been a day prior, probably I would have done it that day also. Yeah.
Right. And it was one of the last few days within the window, right? You caught the last window in a sense.
No, it was not the last window, but the last day of that particular window. So
Okay.
18th, 19th, and 20th, these were the 3 days given to us. So 19th and 20th was the last day. So
Okay.
I went on the last day.
Right.
After that, there
Then,
was another window on 27th of May. I think one of our fellow climber, he climbed on
yeah,
the
Karthik
27th.
could climb
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Right. There's another question. During this time, are the climbers in touch with base camp for any kind of advice, or it's up to the climber and Sherpa to decide whether to move or stay back?
No, so every climber is given a radio set.
Okay.
You are always connected with the base camp and camp 2 also. Because if there is requirement of additional oxygen cylinders, so these are the
Mhm.
people who get the oxygen cylinders up there.
Right.
I stayed one night extra, so there was requirement of another cylinder, oxygen cylinder,
Mhm,
because
mhm.
everything is limited at camp 4.
Correct.
So when we got up in the morning, my Sherpa, he went down to Camp 3. He brought another oxygen cylinder there, and that's how we could stay there for a night extra. So we were in touch with base camp and
And it was
Camp
a
2.
joint decision of the team that you could go the next day.
So you know what happened when we got the base camp thought that we have left around 8 o'clock at night. They
Okay.
thought so because we were
Right.
supposed to leave. So
Correct.
after that, when we got up at 11:30, so when we decided we will sleep, so they were thinking that we have left base camp. So they did not inquire about anything. The next day
Right.
morning, they inquired that where are you people, and we said that we are still here. So that's how it
Right.
happened.
You also spoke about, we read about the logistical preparation and the physical preparation that's required for climbing Everest. But how much did you research about the deaths and the mishaps and the accidents that happen there, and how did you prepare yourself for that?
So I generally, with me, what happens, I see very less of negatives. I see more of positives, and that's the thing which drives me to move forward. And one thing which was told to me by Romil sir also, he said, "Ki Pooja, once you reach there at base camp, you will find too many people doing, with so many titles. Like he has done so many 8,000 meters. This person has done Lhotse, now he's coming for Everest. This person is a seasoned climber. He's been into mountaineering for the last 20 years or so. So
Mhm.
you keep on listening on all these things, but trust your training, trust yourself. So I also, and my husband also always used to tell me, you have to trust your training, you have to trust yourself. You would find lot many people with so many titles, but don't get bogged down with that.
Mhm.
There was everyone was younger to me in my team. Two of them were, one was my fellow age type and one was elder also, but then most of the rest of the lot was younger. So whenever I used to go, I used to find them faster than me, which is okay, which is absolutely fine. So sorry, what was your question? I,
I forgot my question as well. What were we
yeah.
talking about? Yeah, so we usually research about the logistics and physical
Yeah, so
preparation. How do you
yeah.
prepare yourself for
So,
mishap?
yeah, so as far as physical preparation is concerned, I was totally dependent on boots and crampons. I
Mhm.
was 100% sure that whatever is being told to me, I will, if I pursue training programs. The Romil sir was after me. He used to tell me that Pooja, you have to, give time to this. It is not a, small thing. It's a big thing. It's a matter of life and death. It's not
Right,
about doing the summit. It's about, coming back alive. So
correct,
you have to prepare hard. So I used to give whatever was required physically. I used to give my 100%, whatever training schedules were given to me by Alti Edge. I had registered myself with Alti Edge also. I had a
right.
personal training trainer, and I had joined Cult Fit also. So,
Mhm.
so I used to prepare myself physically. Mentally, I have told you that mentally, I psychologically, I used to prepare myself well. That even if I, that fear of, seeing the moment you see somebody lying down, a dead body in front of you, it gives a totally different kind of jolt to you.
Correct,
Then you don't think about submitting. You think that okay, I have to come back. I have to come back alive. Your goal changes.
correct.
So when I saw the first dead body in front of me, I thought so. I said, Ki, Pooja, submit is one thing. You have to get back alive. Not for yourself, but for your husband, for your children.
Right,
So, I prepared myself. I knew that I would find some dead bodies there. I knew that, the cold is going to hit me. I knew that frost bites is going to hit me because that had hit me in Kun also and in Ahmedabad also, and the same thing is going to happen to me Mount Everest also. So I
right,
was well prepared as far as these things are concerned.
right. So
Yeah.
you were aware of it and you were prepared, but there nothing was a surprise when you were there.
I would say no. The surprise was only my snow blindness. I was not prepared for
Right.
that. Yeah.
But I'm
I
glad it
didn't know
worked
that.
out fine in the end,
Yeah.
and your
Yeah.
eyes are okay.
Yeah. That was the only surprise. For rest of the things, I was mentally prepared.
Right. So, you spoke about like summit, your goals change when you see something stark in front of you, right? How do you, and climbing is, it's you have to have an appetite for risk taking, right? And how do you balance risk taking and prudent decision making in high stakes environments such as these? Like, where do you draw the line?
So, when I was going from Camp 3 to Camp 4, that in the middle around 3:30 or so, what happened? My hands totally froze. My
Mm-hmm.
fingers were paining too much. I could not even hold the Jumar and go up. So
Mm-hmm.
I told my Sherpa that I am, unable to hold the Jumar and it's paining too much. So he
Okay.
told me that, ma'am, your eyes are also, red. I said my eyes are red because I have not slept for the last 2 nights. Leave
Mm-hmm.
that. But what do I do with these fingers? He said that let's go back.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to Camp 3 and after that we'll see. So I
Mm-hmm.
told him, this is how, the risk and the decision making. So I told him, what we should do is we should wait for about half an hour, let the sun come up, and if I feel okay, I'll move ahead. Otherwise, we will go down. Because I was
Mm-hmm.
very clear that I have to come back alive.
Right.
So, we stayed put there for half an hour, and after that, when once sun came up, my fingers became okay. Then I said, I told Tenzing, I'm feeling okay. Now let's go up. So this is how you have to, see. Had it been something else, probably I would have come down.
Right.
So one has to make a decision that very moment. That's why I'm saying you have to prepare yourself psychologically that how to take appropriate decision at under pressure whenever you are under pressure. So I was under tremendous pressure that time. There was one Russian team going along with me. They said, "Ki you are not feeling well. You go down." But I knew my body well. I
Correct.
knew myself. I knew my mental faculties. I knew that my body is working fine. I knew that mental faculties are working fine. I'm okay. So one has to judge and take decision accordingly.
Do you think that this, this ability to judge yourself and know yourself, in that sense, your age was in your favor? Because, when you're younger, those things are not very clear. As you grow older, you connect more with yourself and you know yourself better. So, in that sense, like in the sense of decision making, was your age in your favor, you would say?
Absolutely, yes. You're bang on, Niti here. When you are mature, with age, maturity comes up, and you become very, very determined also to do things, and you don't get bogged down by small things in life because you have seen so much of life by then. So
Right.
it really helped me. I knew myself very well. I knew every inch of my body. I knew every step of mine. I knew what I'm going to do at camp one, camp two, camp three, and where I have to take rest, where I have to move. So I knew everything and I have strategized everything accordingly. And
Right.
when you are young, generally this thing doesn't happen. You just follow the command.
Correct.
Sometimes what happens if your Sherpa, my Sherpa was extremely good, but sometimes when you're young, your Sherpa says, no, you have to move, you have to go. So if you're young, you say, okay, I will go along with him. And if your body is also giving up, you are not taking a decision that time. You are just relying on your Sherpa.
Correct.
So yes, my age, my experience, that helped me a lot.
Right. There's a question. It says, were you comfortable with the idea of getting down in case something went wrong? How did you train your mind for that? In
Yes,
case you
I
had
was
to turn
100.
back premature.
Yeah, yeah. So this is what is. I was absolutely fine with that idea. I was absolutely clear if my body is giving me a signal that no, you should not go up, then I would definitely come down. I'm not going there to give my life. I'm
Right.
going there to summit and come back alive. And if I'm not being able to summit, I want to come back alive.
Right. So your
So, and
priority was straight. You
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
were very clear that you
Absolutely.
wanted to come back down alive
Yes,
and well.
yes, yes.
There's no compromises on that at all, and
There's no,
you
there's
trained.
no, and I would recommend everyone to follow this because mountain is not going anywhere. It is
Right.
going to be there itself. And if you come back alive, yes, next year again, you can, always attempt and pursue and achieve your dream. But taking a decision that yes, I have spent so much of money on this expedition, I've trained so well, I will not get this kind of opportunity later in my life, or what will people say if I don't summit? No, these are not the things. I would not recommend anybody to think about all these things when they are climbing up. Your body is your first priority.
Right. And did you have a strategy for how do you calculate the energy going up and coming down? Because we know that most of the accidents happen while coming down, right? And that is
Mhm.
because we expend all our energy going up. So did
Yeah.
you have a strategy to sort of calibrate that?
Yes. So I had worked out this strategy from the very first day when we landed there in Fogding. So, when I used to walk, I used to conserve my energy. Youngsters used to move ahead. I never used to compete with them. I used to walk at my own pace because I knew that I need this energy at this final push. So when we were doing rotations also, I used to slow down myself. I used to go with the slowest person and just wanted to, acclimatize myself, conserve my energy, appreciate the scenario and appreciate the mountain there, and then come back safe and
Oh,
sound. And because I have to give my best on the last day.
right.
So I had restored my energy. So when we were going for our final push, I gave my 100%. I was, at a good pace. I did my complete expedition. So I had conserved, and this is the strategy which I followed. People used to tell me that you're slow. I used to say that yes, I am slow. I can't do anything about it because I was conserving myself,
Yeah, it's good to
mentally
know.
and physically. Yeah.
It's good to know your strengths and weaknesses so that you can calibrate everything according to. It's
Yeah.
not like we don't need to have weaknesses. It's just that we need to be aware of them so that we can strengthen our strengths more than try
Yeah.
to
And
cope
also,
with the weakness.
yeah, yeah. And also in the last 4 years, what I saw that I'm slightly slower than rest of the climbers. So that also became part of my strategy that, if somebody is leaving at 8 o'clock, I leave at 6:30
Right.
so that I take my time and I reach on the top. So that also was there. And I always used to tell Romil sir also and my Sherpa also that I would leave slightly early than rest of the people
Right.
for the final push, not the
Correct.
rest of the days because there's no foundation on time and things like that. Yeah.
Correct, correct. What was the one overpowering emotion? I know that there's like a barrage of emotions that you feel on the summit, but what was that one overpowering emotion that you felt and that you remember?
Niti, I still, as I'm speaking to you, that summit point is in front of my eyes. So when I was going up, I was just 20, I think 20, 25 meters away from the summit. When I
Mhm.
saw those praying flags, that was the, moment I remember the most. And every day that scene comes in front of my eyes, and the way I was remembering my husband, the way I was remembering Almighty. So all these things keep on coming to me. Sometimes I feel that I want to do Everest once more. I told Romil sir also,
I
sir,
can
I want to
imagine.
do. That moment was amazing. Yeah, and that will carry. I'll carry that moment, I think, into my grave too.
I can imagine.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So, because usually, like, I find that because I've been climbing for a couple of years, and I find that joy is such a powerful emotion that it takes a lot of energy, right? And energy is one thing that you don't have on the mountain. You're trying to
Hmm.
do the math on how to balance it out. And I find that when I reach the summit, I have a sense of relief. And then only when I come back, there's like a different feeling of, oh, that happened. That actually
Yeah,
happened. And I'm
correct,
so
correct.
glad that it did.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Yeah, I also had, even when I came back to base camp, people asked me that, how are you feeling? I said, I'm not feeling anything because, it was so overwhelming that time we was all of us, I think all of us were blank, we are not
Right.
feeling anything. So it takes some time also to accept that you have done such a big thing,
Yeah.
in life. Yeah,
Because it takes energy to mentally process so
yeah,
much and then
yeah,
feel an emotion. Like the outlet is the emotion and just
yeah.
no energy to do that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Did this experience match up to the dream? Like everything that you thought it would be, was it that and more? When you first thought you wanted
See,
to climb Everest, you would have had an impression of what that would feel like, right? And when you actually got there, did that sort of match up?
so this is what I'm saying. When I planned to climb up Mount Everest, it was like, I took it as a challenge to myself, whether you can do it or not. That is the biggest personal challenge for myself. So that feeling was different. When I did it, there was no feeling. For good about, 15, 20 days, I had no feelings. People used to ask me, how are you feeling? I said, I'm not feeling anything. So, my friends used to tell me that, Pooja, how can you do? I mean, how can you not feel anything? I said, I don't know, but I'm not feeling anything. So
Right.
after 15, 20 days, when, people started, and asking me about my experiences and all, then I realized that I've done something really good and
Yeah.
something really great. So this is how it had been.
Yeah, it feels unreal till the external world tells you and
Yeah,
comes up to you and says, "Oh,
yeah,
that was great." Because while you're in the
yeah,
process, you're just so focused on getting that done.
yeah.
You don't have the time to think like, "Oh, this is so big." If you did, I think that would also if you did think it was so unachievable or so big, we might not
Hmm.
even be able to do it, right? We have to believe
Yes,
that
yeah.
it's not. a big deal and I can do it. That's how you get there
Yeah.
in the first place.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So last question, Pooja ma'am.
Yeah.
You said you wanted to mentor women of your age and women who are above a certain age. If someone came to you the first time, what would be your first advice or first thought that you would share with them?
Okay. Uh, if somebody if somebody comes to me, my first advice to that person, that lady or person, I don't mind, mentoring a guy also.
Of course.
So my first advice would be to break the shackle of your own mind, your
Right.
own mental bias, that,
Correct.
what will happen? I'm so
Mhm.
old. One has to break all those shackles and get into, I mean, one has to become totally focused and determined that, yes, I want to do this. Rest everything will fall in place.
Right.
If you are passionate about a particular thing, the complete world, the complete universe comes to you and gives you that kind of support. So that would be my first advice to that person, that don't leave it, be totally determined, be 100% focused on what you want to do.
Repeat to yourself
Yeah.
that I can do it, and that's all that
I can
is
do it.
required.
Yeah. So this is what I call inner conversation. I also used to
Correct.
do this inner conversation that, yes,
Self
Pooja, you
talk.
can do
Yeah.
it. Just yeah, self-talk. So, I also used to say, no, one more step, one more step. Yes, it is going to come. You have trained well, you know everything. You are mentally very strong, because people used to tell me that I'm mentally very strong. So I
Right.
knew that I'm mentally very strong. So I used to do that inner conversation. So similarly, everyone has to do that inner conversation. Manifest good things, manifest positivity inside you. And definitely it is going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a great thought to end this on. I think it was. I have heard so many stories about you from Romil sir, of course, in the expedition, and it's lovely to finally get to talk to you. And I think you've signed up for Indrahar, so I will hopefully see you there on 4th of
Oh,
October.
lovely. So you're also coming?
Yeah,
Okay, all
yeah.
right. Yeah,
You're
see you
running how
then.
much?
30.
Oh wow, okay. I'm gonna
So
try to start with
it,
10.
yeah, and yeah, that's absolutely fine. One has to start. The point is one has to start.
Yeah,
This year you're going to do 10, then you'll do 20, and
correct.
after that
That
30K.
first step is the hardest to take, and then you just
Hardest.
set the
Yeah,
rhythm going.
yeah, yeah. So see you there, Niti.
Yeah, yeah, I'll see you
Yeah,
there. It was
yeah.
lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking
Same
the
here.
time out.
And thank you so much, Boots and Crampons, for making this journey so smooth and so comfortable for me, and for training me hard. And because of, I think, their training and their guidance, I could summit Mount Everest at the age of 46. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's the climbers that make the climb, right? We can only
Yeah,
facilitate it. And it's been,
yeah.
the season
No, no,
has
but
been really
guidance.
big for us as well.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was like a dream team of climbers. Everyone was so self sufficient and motivated and driven on your own,
No,
including
otherwise,
yourself.
okay, before we end, let me share one thing with you. Even Romil sir was so anxious. When we used to climb, he used to look at us, whether what's our space and how we are behaving. He was constantly in touch with us, that how you feeling, you okay. He used to give his own down suits to us. He used to give his own jackets to us. I remember Bharat giving his own gloves to one of the fellow climber when we were doing the summit push to
Yeah.
Lobuche. So this kind of personal touch really matters a lot for a
Yes, of
climber to.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I thank Boots and Crampons for that.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
thank you for being in our team.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll see
Thanks,
you soon.
Niti. Yeah, sure. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.